PPC channels for a very large online retailer here in Manchester, where I'm based. And over the last 3 years, just to give you an idea of sort of the level of sales we're doing on Amazon, in the last 3 years, we've done 245 million in sales on Amazon, and that's in UK, Germany, Spain, France, the US, and Canada. So we're running, multilingual PPC campaigns, upwards of the sort of millions in spend. So that's sort of the level I've been dealing at with for a while now. So I just want to go over what we're going to sort of go on today. I just double check. Kumar, I've got control over the screen. Yep.
Yep.
Cool. So what I'd like to go over today is covering the goals you want to be aiming for with PPC on Amazon, and the way in which it differs from other marketing channels particularly. So I'm going to run through that. I'm going to run through specifically things that some of you may or may not have gone over before. Just go back one slide quickly there. Sorry.
My bad. One sec. Oops. Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think particularly for what I want to do for you guys is there's probably going to be a very varied level of PPC experience here. So what I've tried to do is to make it sort of as simple as possible to give you guys an overall structure with which you can really push growth within your categories. So I'll be showing you some tools later on in the presentation, including Helium 10 and how you use that to find areas and niches where you can really press ahead and gain market share. Yep. So the goals you want to be sort of aiming for, it sounds very trite, but obviously aiming for profitable sales. And that is coming from a place of keeping your A costs very low, making sure that you're driving as many sales as possible for the smallest amount of cost, but ensuring you're able to do that to reduce the amount of wastage and pour the extra savings you're doing into new keywords. And so that's all about discovering those, having a campaign structure set up that you're able to make the most of the money you're putting into it. And I think specifically as well, when you're driving profitable sales and keeping a track on ACOS, is you're then able very, very clearly to keep a track on where you are in terms of in the market, how responsive your product is basically to the market. So that can be price, that can be, what kind of effect, maybe your listing is having. And so you're able to then really, really see, based on profitability, how valuable your offering is to the market. And there are benchmarks you can use against this to your competitors, and the ability to test this and to improve your PPC over time will give you a huge, huge wealth of knowledge in terms of understanding how you can improve your product, what products to buy, how much of them to buy, and things like this. And obviously very, very linked with this is maximizing revenue. So obviously you want to be driving profitable sales, but then equally just expanding your overall reach. And this is basically about building a system around your campaign structure where you are harvesting new keywords, finding new opportunities, knowing your competition, understanding the market with which you're working in and category, and then also having the ability to very aggressively attack those markets in an intelligent and data-driven way that you're not wasting money. And moving on from that, you get into building your market share. So once you understand your position, you understand your keywords, you understand the sort of profitability you should be aiming for based on your product, you're really able to go after it. Just back one there quickly, sorry, from Kumar.
Just give me 1 second. I got it completely wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll be showing you a bit later on exactly how you can measure that, how you know where you sit in the market. But basically, building upon those two big things, ensuring that you have as much of a market share as possible and understanding how much you can get. And finally, the sort of main goal of PPC, and I think people underuse it and people don't really understand the data they're dealing with sometimes when it comes to this sort of stuff, is it's the quickest way of understanding what your product is and what your customers think of your product, what kind of reviews you're getting, what kind of response you're getting, what kind of ACoS you're getting, based off different keywords. And so you might have an idea in your head of what your product is, what you want it to be to the customer, and you're just getting, horrible response back sometimes because that's not what they're going for. And you can discover the areas in which consumers are approaching your product, both your product and competitors' product, based on keyword level data, which we'll go into a bit later on. So those are the main four things there, and I'll quickly press on and try and explain some of those. Perfect. Yes, so Amazon PPC and Amazon in general, I'm sure many of you will know, the key to building a very successful listing, a very successful product, is your ability to get it to rank on page one, really. If you want to drive very profitable organic sales with minimal PPC spend, your ability to rank that on page one will put you significantly above the rest of the competition. And if you're not able to do that, you are very limited in your capacity to expand on your product and your product range. So how Amazon works on this is it's a keyword level. So let's say you're selling power tools, and particularly a rotary tool. The word rotary tool will have a ranking for every single product based on every single keyword. So rotary tools and rotary tool will be two different keywords. And how this is decided, and just very quickly, this is how you come up on the page. So below the first two AMP positions, you then have the organic ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down page one. And your ability to get into rank and the way Amazon decides this is all based on sales velocity, more or less. There's conversion rates and things in there, but it's effectively how much of that particular product you can sell at that keyword. So if I sell 1,000 rotary tools under the keyword rotary tool via PPC, I will rank number one for that. And what this will enable you to do is eventually wean yourself off of PPC and basically gain free organic sales. And so over time, what you see is a huge increase in your overall profitability. And that's what we're aiming for, basically, guys. We're aiming for building an entire structure where we can do this across categories, across products, and it's almost like you're building an online asset when it comes to your product on page one. That has enormous, enormous value if you're able to do that. And so I've got a quick thing basically just showing you how this works. So here's the Amazon flywheel. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. And it's one of those positive loops, guys. So you get some PPC sales for a particular keyword. You're getting more reviews for that product, spreading your brand awareness. People are then viewing it much more preferentially. Your conversion rates are going higher. You're getting more traffic, and then because you're getting more traffic, you're getting more sales. And so PPC kind of works as like an injection boost to make this whole process get off the ground. So when you're starting new campaigns, when you're trying to boost things that already exist, when you're trying to just like boost your whole market share, PPC at the moment with the Amazon algorithm is the way you're going about it. So how important is this? So when I first started doing this, it was very unclear. I think a lot of people have an image in their head of that it's product quality, reviews. It's things like this that really make the difference between one product and the other. And there's a lot of truth to that. But what you can see in these two products here, these are a couple of random orbital sanders. They both come from the same manufacturer. They are the same, more or less identical product, the same wattage, power, functionality, more or less the same price. And so the one on the left did £6,200 in the last 30 days. And the one on the right, with pretty much no difference, did 58,000. And the only difference between that was marketing strategy. That's it, just marketing strategy and keyword ranking. And so there's huge differences. And there's a huge opportunity in the market here where people are basically just not paying attention. And you'll be able to tell that because these two products are from brands you've probably never heard of, and they beat out Black & Decker, Makita, Bosch, all of those brands they beat out. And so there's huge opportunity basically. Cool. So if you guys have pen and paper, now would be a good time to just make a couple of quick notes when it comes to campaign structure. So I'm sure some of you are not necessarily mega data ads gurus, but you kind of bear with it on Seller Central. Campaign structure is the thing that is going to make or break your ability to measure the difference in any effect you're having. As well as that, it's going to just save you enormous amounts of time and make your life just much less miserable. You're going to be able to see things very simply. So what I do, and we run over 3,000 SKUs in 5 or 6 markets. I build everything out on an ASIN level and then complicate it below that. So you're able to tell product by product individually in its own campaign with its own different strategies basically. And so what we do here is we build it out within its own campaign with the 3 different match types. And so you've got most of your bases covered. You have the ability to expand your keyword base. You've got the ability to not be limited by your imagination when it comes to keywords. But equally, and you can see this in the top one there, you have what I call exact high volume ad group, which is your ad group for aggressive keyword ranking. And so using tools I'll explain a little bit later, you're able to find sort of your top 5 to 10 keywords and push sales behind these like crazy. And this will, generally speaking, see a higher ACoS. So if you just click through, there's just a couple of animations there. Yeah. And again, yeah, cool. So if you look on the right-hand side there, you're seeing there's a much higher ACoS for the exact high volume than the other ones. And so what you have within this one microstructure is your ability to drive very cheap sales through long tail keywords and forward and phrase advertising, keeping your overall costs down, profitability up. And then you're also within that able to drive higher, more competitive sales, all in the same campaign, blended together, making sure that you remain profitable while you're trying to do this. I hope that makes sense, guys. I will be going over this a little bit later, but if you have any questions on that, please jot them down because this is incredibly important. Next slide, please. Yes, so how do we know all this? How do we gather the data? How do we track it? It's a tool called Helium 10, guys. I'm sure some of you will have heard of it. Some of you probably have this. With this, we use it to gather keyword data to understand which keywords we're going after, track the keywords as they're ranking up, look at competitors, see where we are in the market, and I think one of the most important and amazing ones is your ability to see where you lay in the overall market share. And this is something you're also able to track. So, you might be thinking you've got an amazing product, and we've had this several times, and you're selling, 50 grand's worth of the product a month. And then you look and you're ranking probably, 7th or 8th in that category. And the only difference between that and future success is that you're not buying enough, you're not pushing hard enough on PPC. So it'll give you a much better understanding of sort of where you are. So I'll just go over this a little bit in terms of the tools it has. This might be going over it again for some people, but for those who don't, Helium 10 basically has 3 major tools. The keyword tool, Cerebro, that you can click on in product pages, and you're able to see where your competitors rank, basically. So how I use this tool, I'll go in a category, you'll type in the most broad term for that category, go on the search results page, and I will choose the top performer. It'll either have the bestseller badge or the Amazon badge, and I'll click that and I'll look at what keywords it's ranking for. And it's usually the very high volume ones, it'll rank number 1, and then there's just a huge list of other keywords you can immediately harvest. So if you sometimes lack the imagination for knowing what keywords to go after, this will just save you huge amounts of time. X-ray gives you an idea of market share. You're able to look at that on the search page. I'll show that in the next slide. And Magnet, again, it's just another way of finding keywords by typing in similar keywords. So you might have a very niche product that you're not really sure where it sits. You're able to type in a few keywords. It works almost the same as Google Ads keyword planner, if anyone's had any experience of that before. I've got some examples of this on the next slide. Yeah, cool. So if you look, these top 2 images here are Cerebro. And so what you have is it will give you the product up at the top when you click on it. And then below that, you'll have a big list of keywords on the left, search volume highlighted in yellow, and then the organic rank for that exact search volume. So you have all this wealth of data. You're able to download all this. Someone can't see the images. Frankly, I'll just double check with that.
Sorry, what's that?
I don't know, someone in the chat there.
Somebody in the chat, okay.
Yeah. And just below that, sorry guys if you can't see this, I hope you can see this, it's quite useful. Below that, what you have is an example of X-ray that shows you the entire market share of products. So for this one, I used the term Power Drill. So you can see there's 1.2 million in revenue every 30 days. This within the last 30 days. And it will give you a list of sort of top to bottom of who's driving the most revenue. And it will give you their price, their FBA fee, the number of sales they're doing. Huge amounts of data you can basically use to investigate your own products and things like this. Yeah, that's all for now. I will be taking questions on all this stuff later on. So if you guys just write them down, hold on for them for now. Happy to answer those a bit later on. Magnet, exactly the same thing. The big difference with Magnet is that you have search volume, you have the keywords, but then if you look on the right-hand side, you have something Helium 10 is basically built in itself, which is a calculator based on the algorithm and sales data that tells you the number of sales you'll need to make to rank on page 1. It's an estimate, and I think it's usually over-egged, so you don't usually need as much as it says, but that will give you an indication based off of the search volume, the number of sales that you need in a 30-day period, so 8-day period, to push yourself onto page 1. It seems like there are some people not seeing the images. Yes, we will share them.
It's just Francisca. I don't know what he's saying about sharing the images, but we can continue. I think everybody else is fine. Yeah.
Everyone else is fine. Okay, we will show those later on. Okay. Cool. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here's a visualization of what I was talking about earlier. So you might have a product that has been doing kind of okay for a while, and you're not exactly sure how well that's doing. With Helium 10, you could look at that and you might see that, oh my God, I'm doing 10 grand a month, but I'm actually ranking, on page 6 for all the top terms. And this is something that we found with one of these products, which is a handheld tire inflator. And so what we did is we built up an ad group within the campaign. We pushed sales to behind, I think, 5 or 6 keywords, and one of them here was car tire inflator 12 volt. And what you can see there is the campaign goes live on the first line. On the second line, I upped the CPC, and it goes from sort of ranking about 50, which is page 3-ish, and right up the top there, within a sort of 2 or 3 week period, we were about number 3, and I think currently we're number 2 for that length. And this is, these are search terms with thousands of search terms a month. And so what we did is we front loaded all the costs with the higher A costs. So we made much less profit in the first sort of 2 or 3 weeks, slowed down the advertisements once we were in rank and just made sure we were kind of tracking along. And all of a sudden we just saw a huge spike in profitability and overall sales. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's just an example of sort of what we did, how much we spent, total number of sales in that period and things like this. Because you're working at a keyword level, the numbers might not even look particularly high, and depending on your category, it might take 20 sales for you to push yourself up on some pretty decent keywords. The main thing to understand basically is that the benefit of this is always delayed compared to your always on regular performance of just exact phrase and broad. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's just an indication of kind of the level of sales we were doing before, and then during the advertisement, obviously seeing a lot more. Cool. I hope everyone's following so far. If not, please write down some questions. But I'm just going to go over the main PPC strategies, the basics, the fundamentals that you'll want in most things. And as far as I can tell, there are really 4. And I've gone over a couple of those already. So first things first, it's the aggressive bidding for rank, and you're going to want that in every product that is either new or you view it as a huge opportunity to grow. I've got them built out in everything, and I use it sort of on and off when I need to. And you can be very, very granular with how aggressive, how much you want to spend on what keywords. It basically just, as long as you've got that set up, you're hugely flexible. The second one being the rest of the ad groups within that campaign. So you'll have the aggressive one, but then you'll just have the what I call always on or optimized. And so you just have all your longer tail exact match terms and exact, and broaden phrase, trying to drive as many sales at as low an A cost as possible. And one of the benefits this has is not only are you getting good sales, but you are maintaining the rank that you gained from the aggressive strategy. So let's say it was car tire inflator at 12 volt, and you turn off your aggressive strategy because it was costing too much money. You will still trickle along sales in that on the lower CPC, cheaper, always on ad groups. So you're going to be able to defend your rank against people who are going to try the same strategies against you. So number 3, we've got aggressive and defensive async targeting. So I'm sure some of you guys do async targeting already, product targeting. But when you have a series of products, let's say you do yoga mats, if you've got 5 or 6 similar yoga mats, you're going to want to defend your space at the bottom of your product pages. So you want to make sure your brand has the most general spread of ads all over, because that limits the amount of competition you're going to have. And then obviously conversely on that is doing the exact opposite, which is doing that to your competitors. And there are tools in Helium 10 where you're able to immediately get a big list of asins, download them immediately. You don't have to churn through all your competitors. And then you're able to basically just set up campaigns to do that. And those would be in separate campaigns. And I do this depending on the product. I'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah, on that point, just very quickly go back. A company that you want to talk about big companies that do these kind of strategies. Lego, who I think are in the top 3 or 4 biggest sellers on Amazon in Europe, use this enormously. I think it's one of the bigger strategies. So these are things that companies big and small are all doing. Yeah, and finally, just keyword research strategies. You've got auto campaigns and you've got broad and phrase, just ensuring that you're getting large volumes of longer tail keywords to make sure that you're really fulfilling your potential in the search terms. Cool. And I'm just these are more for you guys if this deck gets shared later on, so you've got some notes. Exactly, basically what I was talking about. What the goal is, when to use this goal, and then how effective. Yeah. Get to those questions afterwards. Yeah. So these 4 basically just run over exactly what I've said. I don't think there's any more detail in those particularly, but I just wanted to make sure they were there for your reference. And then finally, there is a bonus. So finally, there is another strategy, and that is sponsored brand ads. I put that in as a bonus because it really, again, depends on your breadth of product range. So if you have enough of a similar product within a category you can push, it's definitely worth doing. And if you're not doing any of these and you have that, you're definitely leaving sales on the table, because I think last details Amazon gave out, I think brand ads represent about 15-20% of all ad sales. They tend to be a bit more expensive than sponsored products, but again, it depends on your product range, and it definitely gives you a lot more exposure. And if you're trying to really put yourself up as either a premium product or trying to rank, getting as much ad space on page 1 will see huge impacts on sales and conversion rates and things like this. Cool. So hope that hasn't been too complicated. I've rattled through that a little bit, so I will be taking questions. I just wanted to make sure I could get that in time, so we have time for those questions. Keeping track of things, if you're not constantly doing ads all the time, it can be a pain, and I think it's something that overwhelms people. They get confused with the Seller Central platform, and they just are not tracking it on a regular basis. And so this is why, like I said before, I highly recommend all ASINs in their own campaign. Makes your life hugely much more simple. What I use as well is a big Google sheet, and I'm able to give templates of this for anyone that gets in touch with Prem Kumar, that basically maps out where you are at any given time. So I'm able to go, we've got thousands of SKUs. So I'm able to go in and see, okay, well, what are the strategy that I'm implementing on this individual ASIN, and I can find it immediately, and I know where I am at all the time. So it just saves you huge amounts of time. And for the more complicated stuff, if anyone is interested, the things that you should be measuring are things like organic to paid sales ratio. And if you're looking to push your rank and build that market share, this is very, very key, because it's an indicator of the level of potential you have left to push. Whether or not you're maxing out your opportunities really, and this will just make deciding things about profitability, stock buying and things like this. It will simplify a lot of that. As well as that would be total ad cost of sale. I know you guys probably all look at ACOS on Seller Central platform itself, but make sure you're looking at that in relation to your total sales and track that over time, because then you'll be able to map out your goals basically. So if you have X percentage margin overall, you're only going to want to lose a certain percent on ads. And if you're tracking that overall, you're able to kind of map out getting that down as you're pushing rank. There's a lot more stuff I could talk about today, guys, but I hope that's both clear, it's been useful, and yeah, any questions you've got, please do ask. More than happy to answer any questions you've got. Yeah, just a couple of slides, I think. Yeah, so the goal of taking your account from that to full Jeff Bezos. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do with PPC. So yeah, that's me, guys. Any questions I will be taking later on, so just jot those down.
Thank you so much, Billy, for that. It was very wonderful. Thank you. And the last slide, you nailed it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. For any questions, please go to slido.com and enter 96182. Please line up your questions for the attendee questions section later after having a good chat with Steve. Hi, Steve. Welcome you again. I'll just switch straight over to the Slido window. Are you all still able to see the Slido?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, fine. So there had been a different question now. So let's take one question at a time with Steve. Steve, as far as I have seen, when I speak to many accountants, their specialization in e-commerce is not very great. And I have seen only very few accountancies that specialize in e-commerce. Why do you think is that? What's the complexity that's stopping the accountancies to become specialists in e-commerce?
Yeah, well, I think there's, well, depending on, from one accountant to another, there's a combination of reasons why you don't see many specialists. One is that a lot of accountants aren't great at marketing, and they don't understand the value of the niche. Then I think there's also those that just don't want to get involved in the extra complexities that you have with e-commerce businesses. When Making Tax Digital was introduced last year, I mean, there were actually quite a few accountants that were nearing retirement that brought forward their retirement because they didn't want to have to deal with the extra complexity. But generally speaking, I think it's just a lack of willingness to actually focus on a niche and preferring to try and appeal to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, all right, fine, fantastic. Thank you. And what complexities do you encounter in accounting for VAT for the e-commerce clients? I know because in my business I deal with a lot of VAT complexities just with one channel. I know people who are dealing with Amazon, eBay, and Shopify, and maybe some more marketing channels as well. And how do you deal with VAT? Because each platform does VAT differently. So
yes. Well, that's exactly the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how complex it is really depends on what you sell and where you sell it. If you're selling only in the UK on Amazon, you're always going to have a minimum of 2 different VAT types in a settlement, but you can have as many as 6. If you use the Pan EU program and you've got VAT registrations throughout the EU, then you're going to have many more different VAT types, well over 30. And as you say, if you're a multi-channel seller, then you're getting sales data from different sources in different formats, and you've got to manage the VAT in all those different channels. Sometimes also, well, if you're selling a digital product, then that's a whole different ballgame altogether, because you have a lower VAT threshold. It's only just under 9,000, and you have to account for VAT at the rate or the appropriate VAT rate where your customer is in the EU. And although you don't have to register for VAT in all those countries in the same way as you do with non-digital products, if you go over the distance selling threshold, you do have to submit a separate return that shows all the sales by country and all the VAT by that country, which is in addition to your normal UK VAT return. And if you allow B2B sales on Amazon, then you'll also have to submit an EC sales list to HMRC as well. So it's not necessarily always that complex if you've only got a limited number of products with all at the same VAT rate and on one channel. But as soon as you start expanding out, then yeah, it can get very complicated.
All right. What kind of tools do you suggest for people to use when they deal with multiple channels?
Well, that really depends a great deal on the channels you're using. A2X, of course, one of your sponsors, is a fantastic tool if you're selling on Amazon or Shopify, because it manages that interface between the two and your accounting system. The accounting system that we always use is Xero, mainly because I think it is the easiest to use for someone who isn't an accountant and doesn't have that much experience of accounting. But if you then start looking at additional channels, you really got to look beyond A2X, because that only works with Amazon and Shopify. And also, once you start going in multi-channel, then the whole order management process and fulfillment becomes that much more complicated, and you've got to manage your listings as well, all in different channels. And there are applications that you can use for that purpose. Linworks is one example, Expand is another, but they've all got their different advantages and disadvantages. Linworks connects with more marketplaces, so it's good from that point of view, and you can use it to you manage the whole order management and fulfillment process and all your listings all in one place, so you're not having to update your listings in all your different channels. But then again, it doesn't connect to accounting systems like Xero. There is a third-party app that you can use to connect Linworks to Xero, but it doesn't have a great reputation. And what I tend to do is still use A2X for the Amazon sales, but then manually import, well, using the reporting options within Linworks, produce a report of all the sales and manually import that into Xero. Expandly, on the other hand, doesn't connect to as many marketplaces, but it does connect to Xero, which shouldn't be a surprise really, because most of the people that work there used to work for Xero. But it doesn't connect in the same way that A2X connects, whereas A2X connects, it brings in a summary of the settlement. Expandly will bring each individual sale into Xero, which still leaves you with quite a bit of work to do once it's in Xero and you're trying to reconcile it to your bank transactions. So it really depends on, as I say, the marketplaces and the channels that you're involved with, and how much you want to be able to use that kind of system that sits in between, like Linworks and Expandly, to manage the whole process from start to end.
Yeah, okay. I hear that it's much complex even with tools, and it's better to use right kind of people in, isn't it?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Also, in e-commerce businesses with a lot of SKUs that we have, many times the margin leaks go unnoticed. That's more important. The margin leaks. When you do a P&L, you see the whole P&L, but you don't see the margin leaks on a certain product, most likely, right? Especially in businesses where you have thousands of SKUs. And what approach do you suggest to keep an eye on P&L on unique basis?
Yeah, well, I think you're more likely to get margin leak if you don't have a niche and you're selling on price, which of course is always it's the race to the bottom that nobody can win. But to manage, you can manage your margins at two levels. Of course, you've got your profit and loss account, which will show the margin that you've achieved. But where a lot of people go wrong with that is that they tend to not necessarily have a particularly accurate profit and loss account, because they don't perhaps always account for stock. So what I mean by that is that if, for instance, you're just starting out in month one, you buy 2 products for £5 each, and you're going to sell them for £10 each. So you're going to make £5 profit on each sale. And in month one, you just sell one of them. On a cash basis, your P&L would say you've got sales of £10, and you've got purchases and cost of sales of 10, and you've made no money. And then in month 2, you sell that second item. So in month 2, your P&L will say you've got £10 of sales, no cost of sales because you accounted for the purchase of that product in the previous month, and you've made £10. So you can very easily see that your margins in your P&L are going to be all over the place, depending on when you buy your stock and how much stock you've got. So it's critical to account for your stock, and effectively back out the cost of that for that product that you didn't sell in month 1, so that your cost of sales is £5 in month 1, and it's £5 in month 2, and you therefore accurately show that you've made £5 margin in each of those two months. So what you're really trying to do in your P&L is match your sales with your costs. You make a sale and you recognize that cost of that sale. And Amazon, the way that Amazon settlement, the way that the settlements work with all the platforms and all the marketplaces, is that of course you don't receive the money from that sale on the day that you make that sale. So if you account for the sale when it hits the bank, if you're on a typical Amazon settlement routine of settlements every 2 weeks, then when you receive a settlement on the 5th of the month, most of those sales will actually relate to the previous month, and which of course is what A2X deals with very well, because it will split a settlement into 2 months. So there's all sorts of areas where that kind of margin reporting can go wrong, and it's just that attention to detail in your accounting in terms of making sure that you really are truly matching the sales with the costs each month. But you can manage your margins at a more granular level as well. You can track them by channel and by SKU, but it's those order management systems like Nimworks and Expandly that will give you the ability to do that, because I mean they are systems which you will use to manage the whole process from start to finish, and you'll actually raise your orders for your products from within those systems as well. So it knows the cost of the product. When you make a sale, it reduces the stock level, so it knows how. It doesn't just know what the quantity of stock that you've got at any one point in time. It knows the value of that stock, so you can use the reports within those systems to analyze your margins at the lowest possible level, on a transaction by transaction basis. So that's once you get into large quantities of SKUs and large volumes, then that's where you want to be going. Really, it's not so bad when you've only got a few products, but you can't do it any other way once it starts getting more complex. A2X does actually have a cost of goods sold option in it, but it does rely on you maintaining a database of your costs of your products within A2X. But it does work well if you use that option. It will help you to get a more accurate P&L.
Cool, thank you. That's a good insight. Thank you so much. And one last question to you before we delve into the members' questions. So the EU markets are very lucrative, especially the Germany market is bigger than the UK market from Amazon themselves. That's the stats say. But the VAT itself is very painful. The
Yes,
of dealing with
especially Germany.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I deal with scanned papers with signatures from signatories. So it's not as digital as we see in the UK. So it's very complex out there. What approach have you taken to support your multi-country clients? I know for one, Hello Baby Limited is multi-country. How do you
Yep.
deal with those clients?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not really practical for us to provide EU VAT services. So we actually partner with a company called VAT Global, who specialise in non-UK VAT services, not just in the EU, but they also manage goods and service tax in all the major markets around the world. So we work together. That's their specialist area, so they're best at doing that. We can advise on requirements and monitor thresholds to see when registrations need to be made. But then when it gets to actually making the registration, we hand over to them and they file the returns, and we provide the data to them each month in most cases, because actually Germany, as you mentioned, is monthly VAT returns. And they actually have 13 VAT returns every year, because you have an annual return as well. Sometimes we can give HMRC a lot of stick and think we've got a lot of red tape in this country, but actually when you compare us to the rest of Europe, it isn't actually that bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like NHS,
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time, and we will open up for the members' questions now. The questions are mixed up for both Billy and Steve, I believe. So let's go one by one. The first question from Nick is, how effective are the auto campaigns? Billy?
Yeah, good question. Varied is the simple answer. It depends on what your goal is for the auto campaign. One point I would make is don't use them for a new product. Make sure you've got a product with plenty of reviews, because the auto campaigns are there mostly to fill in the gaps where your own PPC lacks. So generally speaking, once you've got a good PPC account set up, you've got good reviews, on the product already, setting up an extra auto campaign and then negating all of your keywords from your live campaigns into the auto campaign, it will generally run pretty low ACOS if you do it right, because it's just filling in the very long tail gaps. Obviously, you can use this in different ways. You can use it to simplify your process, I guess, if you don't want too complicated an account structure. But generally speaking, yeah, I would use it to fill in the gaps. And complements and substitutes only give you ASINs in the search term reports. So I generally don't use those as much because I'm generally looking to gather search term data. Hope that answers your question.
I think it does, definitely, for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question, I'll go one by one there. To start a PPC campaign, how much percentage we should allocate from product's cost? I read this as what's the ideal percentage that we can allocate for PPC campaigns on the selling price?
Yeah, I see that as like a margin question, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, only you can answer that depending on your products, but generally speaking, obviously as low as possible. Maybe I can give you a more specific answer based on the talk I gave. If you're ranking, for example, let's say you've got a new product and you want to push it into rank, you can get away with breaking even. It's not amazing, it's not the best thing to do in the world, but you can get away with breaking even if you're pushing some products into rank and you're able to gain cheap organic traffic later on. Otherwise, the answer really is as low as possible. I mean, if you're worried about it and you're worried about spending lots of money, start with low budgets. Start with low budgets, low CPCs, and sort of move from there, really. But there's no real benchmark.
What's the kind of average that you see in your Domo brand's products? Something that's stabilized.
Ratio of paid to organic sales, you mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It depends on the category and stuff. I mean, if it's a product that you can rank on page one, you don't need any more than 15-20% paid. So if you're ranking very, very highly, you only need paid advertising really to fill in the gaps, number one, and to make sure, and number two, to make sure that you don't lose rank to other competitors. And so generally speaking, you get like an 80-20, 90-10. Obviously, the lower paid percentage you can get over time, the more profitable your product's going to be. And another thing, guys, like if you're able to do that, you kind of, to a degree, become the price determiner of that market. So you can really, unless it's a very price elastic market, you can put yourself at the top, and then if you need to add an extra 10% of margin on because to cover whatever problems you've had, you're kind of able to do that. So keep that in mind.
Cool, thank you. And one question for Steve there. How to deal with taxes using Shopify selling products across the USA and EU?
Well, Shopify has VAT settings within it, and as soon as Shopify realizes that you've made a sale into a new country, it will ask you to tell it what the VAT rate is for that country. So once you've got your VAT rate set up within Shopify, when you bring that data across to your accounting system, whether you use A2X or you can actually integrate Shopify directly with Xero without A2X at all. But what you actually get within Xero is then completely different. A2X will bring in the settlement with a breakdown by country of all the different VAT rates, whereas if you integrate Shopify and Xero directly, you get each individual sale separate, and each individual sale will obviously have the VAT rate appropriate for that country if you are indeed registered in that country. And then you've got more reconciliation work to do because each sale is recorded separately within your accounting system, which you then need to match to the settlement. Of course, you don't necessarily, I mean, depending on whether you've actually reached the distance selling threshold, you might still be able to account for your EU sales at the UK VAT rate. So it's only if you've gone over the distance threshold that you'll need to set up all these different VAT rates. Same with the States.
All right, cool. Thank you. And another question for Billy there. What are some of the common mistakes Amazon startups make when it comes to accounting? Oh, I think it's about Steve again. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I can answer that if you want.
Well, one mistake that some people make is doing absolutely nothing at all until they reach their first year end, and then realise they've got to do some accounts and a tax return. But assuming that they are doing something, then I think that comes back to what we were talking about before, really, is in terms of not being able to see their true margins because they're accounting on a cash basis, and therefore their margins are up and down, and they don't really know. They just don't know how they're what they're actually achieving, and also monitoring yourselves against the different VAT thresholds to make sure that you're aware of the need for any registrations. I think some kind of start out on the basis that they'll not reach the VAT threshold, and then they do a lot better than they think they will. And the problem with VAT from a retailer's point of view is that, well, it's never a good thing. As soon as you have to register for VAT, then you will become less profitable. So if you start out with a model that's got very slim margins and it's successful, then it's all going to fall apart as soon as you hit that threshold.
Good, thank you. One question here: what are some of the things we should keep our eye on if we are selling in the USA, again for accounting in there?
Right, the USA is, well, in some respects it's becoming a little bit less complicated, but it is without doubt the most complicated place to sell in terms of goods and services tax. It's if you think of the UK and imagine if every county, Derbyshire, Lancashire, Hertfordshire, was a separate jurisdiction with its own rules and its own thresholds, that's what it's like in the States. Every state is different with its own rules and thresholds. They have what they refer to as tax nexus, which are the factors that require you to register for GST in the States. And like the EU, if, for instance, you use Amazon FBA in America, that in pretty much all states would create an automatic requirement to register for GST. The one thing that's making it now slightly less complicated is the fact that most states, probably about 3/4 of them now, have brought in marketplace rules, which requires the marketplace, like Amazon, to account for the GST on your sales, so you're not having to do it yourself. But then if you're setting up a Shopify store, for instance, and selling directly into the States, then that doesn't help you. You've then got to look at the thresholds. Again, just like the UK and EU, there are different thresholds, but they're different in every state. The one good thing about the States is that the thresholds tend to be quite high, typically $100,000 just for a single state. So until you become a 7-figure seller, you probably don't need to worry about it too much.
All right, cool, thank you. And there's a good question on, I don't know which one to choose. You choose, Billy, which one?
Yeah, sure, go to the top one. Just quickly, guys in the chat, if you're, I've seen some questions appear in the chat, do send those over to Slido, because I don't know if we're seeing those.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, so top one, yeah, so what's the difference between Helium 10 and eGrow? I don't know anything about eGrow. All I can say is that Helium 10 is by miles the best piece of software on the market. It's not even close. The data you get is insane. The tools, so I'll go on to this in the next question actually, the tools you get are incredible. And it's only, I mean, given the level of sales that we do as a business, I think we pay $190 a month. It's not expensive. It's not an expensive bit of kit. So I mean, if you're kind of selling at any rate and really want the value of any of this, I could not recommend it enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want me to move on to the next one? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Correlation between PPC and receiving reviews. Well, short answer, yes. The more sales you get, the more reviews you're likely to get. Back to the Helium 10 thing. Helium 10 has a tool where you're able to customize the automated emails that get sent out to your customers. So in terms of copy, so you can't actively ask for positive reviews, obviously, but you can be much more suggestive in terms of trying to up your your open rate on those emails, up the rate of reviews you're getting. And it's something that we've done, and it's definitely speeds up the process of getting reviews. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's the last question that we have there.
Would you recommend adopting
Yeah.
Amazon advertising company competition and negative consequences? Generally speaking, I would try and make money. You know, I mean, you can try and push yourself to the top, but if you then put your price up and your product is not the quality or whatever, you're just going to fall down the rank again. So you can't completely game the system forever. You know, you have to be able to maintain both a price to sort of quality ratio if you're pushing yourself up. So I would always try and recommend making money on that. And generally speaking, you should do. And if you can't, then just choose a keyword with fewer search terms that's less competitive. You know, you don't need to be #1 for, you know, books, but you know, you might be able to be #1 for, you know, science fiction books, this and this. You know, there's different ways of doing it. So far, yeah, I would always try and make money on it. It's a dangerous approach to kind of do that without knowing what the result is going to be.
All right. Yeah, that's a very wise advice. Never. Yeah. Yes.
I make money. Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve also nods. Yeah, definitely from the finance point of view. All right. So somebody here, as a corporate employee at Amazon, I find your input very interesting. Thanks for answering my questions. I think it's Nick that had mentioned that.
I hope they give you some time off. Not working 90 hours a week. Yeah.
Good. All right. Fine. I think that's the end of all the questions that we have had. Thank you so much for both of you. But stay in there. I just got the last bits of information to share with everyone. So the offer that we promised to display, you can hire Billy directly from AmazinSellers.com. If you go to AmazinSellers.com on this particular link, or you can navigate down to the list of consultants available and find Billy there. The offer is valid for 1 hour and 2-hour bookings, only today and tomorrow, and after that it won't be available. You know what? There is a what's good about the platform is that it has a 3-way approval of work. You pay to AmazinSellers Limited, and once you approve that the work is all done and completely satisfied everything from Billy's side, from the client side, and from my side, there's a 3-way approval. Only then the money will be dispatched down to the consultants. I'm sure Billy is worth the time, 100%. But just in case, you know. How many of you noticed the Easter egg through his presentation? Anybody there in the chat?
He was listening. He was paying attention.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Just yeah. There you go. There's one.
There you go. There it is.
One of them, definitely. Yeah. That's Billy 50. So if you use this offer code, you can get 50% off on 1 and 2-hour bookings in this particular page. And the other offer is also very lucrative. From Steve, he has offered kindly the first month free for us when you speak with him. You can go to this particular link. It will be again part of the PDF that I will send out after the webinar here. But if you want to remember it, that's elverecommerceaccountants.co.uk/AmazinSellers. I'm sure it's easy to remember. That's pretty much I wanted to show you today. And thank you so much, Billy. Thank you so much, Steve, for taking part of your valuable evening. Many thanks for your time. And it's really pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm glad to do it.
Thanks for all the attendees as well to join in and make it more interactive. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. See you.
See you later.